All right, hello, coffee makers, not coffee takers. The master of cyber farms, Alfredo B. Nash Jr., and I, the People's Chief, Dr. Joseph J. Bermiller Jr., are your hosts for the Cyber Coffee Hour. And the Cyber Coffee Hour originates from Mount Vernon, New York, and we're excited to hear the experiences and stories of our incredible guests. Our mission is to share knowledge, deepen understanding, and foster a sense of community in the vast realm of cyberspace. So for today's show, we'll have a coffee chat with CEO and co-founder of CyberHoot, Craig Taylor. Now, meet Craig Taylor, a cybersecurity veteran with over 30 years of experience and a CISSP certification since 2001. As co-founder of CyberHoot, Craig has dedicated himself to improving global cyber literacy since 2014. His distinguished career spans leadership roles across multiple industries, from web hosting at CSC to finance at JP Morgan Chase and manufacturing at Vistaprint. Today, Craig heads a thriving cybersecurity consultancy providing virtual CISO services to more than 40 companies and counting. Beyond his professional achievements, Craig is a Toastmaster, committed Rotarian, and passionate fundraiser who has generated over $130,000 for cancer research through the Pan Mass Challenge in the past decade. Craig Taylor, welcome to the Cyber Coffee Hour.
Dr. Joseph, it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Awesome. So as I mentioned, as we had a little chat earlier, man. I believe this was a great get for the Cyber Coffee Hour. So I'm really happy to have you on the show. But before we get into things, just how you been, and how things been going on for you this week.
Well, I'll be honest, it's been a busy week. My company, CyberHoot's been growing like crazy. We set a new record this past week for signups on consecutive days in a row. On Friday, we hit our new longest number of business days with a sign up in our platform. So that was pretty exciting. And it's a great week. I work with some amazing people. I'm just really blessed to be in the chair that I'm in within CyberHoot and within my life at the time. Things seem to be fitting together very nicely.
That's awesome. No, that's great to hear. For me, I just been well. I'll just say if you've been paying attention to the news as it pertains to the federal government, you already know. But with that said, just really been just staying busy and just staying focused on things I can maintain and be in charge of. So, but outside of that, just really been good, man. Just really just trying to take it easy. It's been raining like crazy here in the DMV. It's been pretty much a washout, but it's at the same time, just thankful for everything that's been going on. But outside of that, it's been good. I'm looking forward to today. I'm looking forward to sitting here with you as we dive into this new episode. So I'll just get this going. So Craig, you've been in cybersecurity for over 30 years. How have you seen the threat landscape evolve since you started, and what changes have surprised you the most?
So that's interesting. It's an interesting question. I think about that a lot because as part of our virtual CISO practice, we need to help our clients protect themselves against the emerging threats that are out there. So we have to study the industry. We have to study the attacks, read the papers. Of Verizon Data Breach Report, for example, is a summation of all the attacks over the last year. It's a kind of the Bible of cybersecurity and CISSP professionals. I guess what I am most surprised about is that there's been such a growth in the number of attacks. The attacks themselves are more damaging when they're successful. They're more sophisticated in their delivery mechanisms. But what isn't surprising is that they all focus in on the number one and number two types of breaches, the methods that hackers breach our companies, regardless of the size of company, is through social engineering delivered via email, also known as phishing attacks, and poor password hygiene, where some password's been exposed online on a breach of a website, it's not been encrypted, and the hackers can see your password and they reuse it to get in on your VPN or your email address or even your bank account. But I guess over time, it remained true that those two things, as far back as 2003, according to Verizon, it was phishing number one and password hygiene number two. And they said the same this past year. So things are the same, but they're more damaging, frequent, and sophisticated today than they were 20 years ago.
And that's a very interesting point. Do you feel I guess what's the underlying or motivating factor behind it as to why maybe that we've seen that increase? Is it because we're I guess, more or less being too nonchalant when it comes to our cybersecurity practices, or, especially with of course, with, the latest apps and, devices, is it, are we kind of losing track of maintaining that cybersecurity, maintaining our cybersecurity for our networks and devices?
Well, I think the answer to your question is rather rudimentary in the sense that anyone graduating high school and beyond, college, even PhDs, will have really strong computer literacy skills. They can operate a mouse, a keyboard, a calendar, email, all of those things. But they have really very low to non-existent cyber literacy skills. And that hasn't changed in the past 20 years. What has changed is that the financial benefits from performing cybersecurity attacks and successfully breaching companies has become more and more lucrative. And that's
Yes.
been a snowball effect. As hackers in faraway places breach companies and drive to work each day in fancy new cars and everyone else is poor or destitute, word gets around and they train up their colleagues and peers in their peer group to do the same kinds of attacks. And then when you add in automation, there are forums on the dark web where you can buy your hacking tools and your ransomware attacks, and you can get support for it from the hacking organizations that put these things out. It's become a corporation, this idea of hacking.
Right. Yeah.
Here's a fact for some of your listeners. The three largest economies last year, I'll bet you can name two, but not the third.
The three largest
Economies in the world. What country had the biggest economy? The US. That's a given, right?
Right. I
Followed by what? China?
was gonna, yeah, China. Is Saudi Arabia on there?
I imagine they are, but they're not the third largest. Cybercrime is the third largest revenue generating economy in the world last year, according to Cybersecurity Ventures and some other places. That tells you just how lucrative it is and why there are so many companies getting into it. Now, it begs the question, why don't we know more about that? Why don't we hear more about that? We certainly hear about breaches and notifications and all sorts of things, bad things happening to companies, but it's wickedly underreported because it's embarrassing. And companies don't want to kill their brand or their client base by reporting these things. So a lot of it goes unreported. But as a security professional like yourself, I'm sure you could appreciate the fact that that begets more of these attacks. And when it's successful, more people get involved and they start doing the same thing. And as the economy has difficulty in the potentially in the near future with recessionary conversations going on now, it's going to get worse. When you don't think it's possible year over year for it to get worse because you think every year this has got to be the apex of the attacks that we're going to see, it doesn't ever get better. I think it all boils down to, at the end of the day, it's so easy to socially engineer your way. I don't know if you ever watched Mr. Robot, but he could get
Oh,
into
yeah.
any building, he could get into any computer system, and what they depicted in that show was very realistic.
Hmm.
He would prey on people's willingness to help, right? Carry a box to the front door of a building and someone's going to open it for you because you got a hands full, and you walk right in. So that's all part of cyber literacy training. And unfortunately, despite my better efforts, I can't get into the schools to do it. We're trying to give CyberHoot away to school children, kids in K to 12 and in high school to teach them some cyber literacy skills, even for free. And there's just so many demands on teachers, they can't focus on one more thing. So it's not happening.
Right. So as a co-founder of CyberHoot, what inspired you to focus on cyber literacy education, and what common misconceptions do you find most people have about cybersecurity?
Thanks for that question. I love this question because people don't know that 35 years ago, I got a degree in psychology, an undergraduate degree, where I studied operant conditioning as one of many topics. Operant conditioning is simply explained as studying positive and negative reinforcement theory. On the negative side, when you punish bad behaviors, you tamp them down or reduce them. You don't eliminate them, but you reduce them. On the positive side, when you reward good behaviors, you're boosting those behaviors over and over again. And so I studied that in university. And then I went into cybersecurity and forgot about it for quite a while. But when I founded CyberHoot 10 years ago, my company now, and we started looking at cyber literacy education, we found an industry overwhelmingly supporting negative reinforcement theory. And the best example for understanding, anyone listening to this to understand, is you can train a dog with a shock collar or with treats, food treats. And when you use a shock collar, it doesn't really eliminate the behaviors, it just reduces them. If there's a rabbit across the road, that dog's going to ignore the invisible fence, get shocked, and go chase after that rabbit. No different than an employee. If you punish them for failing in fake email phishing tests, which is the most common thing that companies feel they have to do, embarrass them, create anxiety and fear, they're going to click less until there's a really nice spear phishing attack in their inbox. They can't resist. They're going to click it. And that could be the end of a company. It could be, the advent of ransomware, business email compromise, wire fraud, all sorts of things come from that one click. On the other hand, if you teach your employees on the positive side, the things they need to know, if you teach them how to phish, you stand a reasonable chance of feeding them for a lifetime of processing email safely, securely, confidently in their inbox with the positive behaviors they need to know. It's simple math, right? If you understand something at its fundamentals,
Right.
you're going to be able to implement that in your daily practices. If you fear something, you're just going to be fearful, but hackers have ways around your fear by enticing you to click.
That is very, no, I think that's very true because if I think for a lot of people, if they operate out of a state of fear, or it's always you had that anxiety about something. I think at one point they may succumb to that. As you mentioned, if something is very enticing, it may pull them in. On the flip side, as you said, focus on what those positive outcomes could be. As you learn about it, like what's the positive side of things, and you're like, all right, I want to. This is what I want to do or aspire to. Even I think you can even tie it in when it comes to. I'm always looking for different ways how you can improve your study. And so, if you look at like gamification, you have like almost like, you get points for every time you read, I don't know, 30 pages of, just different things that kind of motivate you and the positive reinforcement. So I think those things definitely matter. And I think it's a way of kind of more or less like hacking your brain to do something maybe you found boring or didn't really necessarily like. But if you kind of restructure to reframe it in a way to like, oh man, this is more, especially on the positive side, you're more apt to do it and be more successful.
I really agree. Unfortunately, the industry doesn't see it that way just yet. So we're trying to be change agents here at my company to refocus the emerging industry of cybersecurity into a more positive light, and we talk about this with our CISO sometimes, Dr. Joseph. We say we can't be the office of no. When someone asks the virtual CISO at their company, we want to do this, can we do it? We can't be the office of no. We have to be the office of yes. However, you need to do it in these ways to mitigate the risk that you might have introduced by doing it the way you wanted to in the beginning. And that's a very different mindset. Instead of always saying no to everything, people will be more afraid to come and ask you, which is why often the cybersecurity question is asked last in a project. We got 90 miles down this road and we have 1 mile to go, but is this safe and secure to do it this way? Well, it's a little late now.
I know.
Course correct.
That should be the number one question.
Yeah. Well, and if we're the office of yes, then we certainly can do that, right? We can be involved from the beginning because we can say, absolutely, we can do that. And here's how.
Right. Exactly. So with that said, could you share an example of a particularly challenging security situation that you've helped a client navigate through your vCISO services?
Absolutely. So already this year, it's early. It's been beginning of the second quarter. I've had 3 major cybersecurity incidents that have led to multiple, 1, 2, 3, probably all 3 were over $100,000 losses for the companies that got breached in one way or another. 2 were wire fraud and 1 was ransomware. And, when we look at how those things happened, they were preventable with a little bit of cyber education, a little cyber literacy training. In one case, an individual was oversubscribed to hundreds of mailing lists in their inbox, flooded themselves day after day. They were getting mailing list after mailing list, email after email, all unwanted. And so he took it upon himself to start unsubscribing with those blue links at the bottom, unsubscribe from this. And, it began to decrease over a couple of days, but all of a sudden he got a phone call from his bank saying someone's trying to wire funds out of your bank account. I think your account's been compromised. And they shut his bank account down. They reset his passwords for him and all that. And then he got an email from a friend saying, you're emailing out invoices to all your friends, all the people you've talked to. I got one. Someone else in my company got one. It's highly unusual for you to do that. So his email account had been compromised as well. So what happened? He calls me up to say, Craig, I'm in this terrible situation. What do I do? Well, we come to find out these unsubscribe links, one of them had an evil proxy website between it and the unsubscribe website, where it reaches in. Evil proxy is just a piece of malware that can reach into your computer and say, do you have any active tokens that are good for a website you're logged into presently? And almost always there's an email token because you're in your email reading things and doing things. But he happened to be in his bank as well. And it was a good thing because that was the early canary in the coal mine that alerted him to the compromise. So we helped him recover from that. In another case, it was a VPN that didn't have multi-factor on it, an SSL VPN. And so hackers got in, they encrypted stuff, they exfiltrated stuff, and they performed what's called double extortion. 10 years ago, ransomware was protected against by having good backups. You could take your data back from a backup, put it in place. You might lose half a day of data if you weren't backing up instantly, but you could move on and not pay the ransom. Not so today. The hackers have gotten wise. In fact, in this particular case, they didn't encrypt any data. They put little notices that we have all this data in this folder, in this folder, in this folder, and it was very sensitive client-facing data, and they had exfiltrated it. And so the extortion was, we will delete the data and not release it to the internet if you pay this ransom. And so that was a very expensive case. And the third case was somebody was forwarding their email from their work email to their Google account. The Google email didn't have multi-factor on. They were selling their practice, their business, and hackers were in their email reading the negotiations and knew when the wires were going to be sent and registered a domain name with an S on the end of one company and moved the conversation out of his Google account to the new domain, company Acme Corporation S with an S on the end.com, where it was Acme Corporation before, and said, here's the new wiring instructions. And so off went the wire, and no one knows where it went. All of these things are tied back to a lack of cyber literacy, training, phishing, an ability to understand how phishing works. And so I say this to anyone listening to this. If you aren't dealing with your human firewalls, they are always the weakest link in your cybersecurity program, without a doubt. And so you have to do the video trainings once a month is what we prescribe, and your phishing simulations. But too often, phishing in everybody's world is a negative exposure. It's sending fake messages to see if they can spot and avoid them. And that doesn't work. That's the negative reinforcement approach. You want to do a positive reinforcement, gamification, certificates of completion, avatars that become more mature looking as you complete exercises in this phishing realm. In our world at CyberHoot, we walk you through an actual fake email simulation where we've typo squatted the sending domain by one letter in most cases, which is not possible in fake email testing, but this is what hackers do. They'll send an email with that S on the end of the corporation, or they'll put a period in the middle of a domain name and register a weird looking domain name. It's only weird by one letter though. People don't recognize that. So we test them on it, and it's an open book test. So when you go through this, if you're not sure what a typo squatted domain looks like, we give it to you right here on the right. And we give you, operant conditioning says the best learning you can do is when you pair the stimulus with the correct response in tight time proximity, psychology 101. So when we present this phishing thing and they go through it, maybe they get it right the first time, or if they're struggling, they get a little open book help. They learn in that moment, this is what I have to look for. Oh, and this is why urgency and emotionality is so often, critical to a hacker breaching a company, because they want you to react to this email. If they give you time to respond, like you can click this link tomorrow if you want, it isn't going to work because you're going to question it over the course of even 5 minutes and say, this doesn't make any sense. But if you react to it in the moment, you're going to make more mistakes and click. Someone's going to click. So we teach these skill sets. We teach you how to phish by putting together 7 puzzle pieces into a crystal clear picture of what phishing is. We do it with rewards and positive encouragement, all these good behaviors, so that when you get that really good fish, Dr. Joseph, and you're like, I really want to click, but my muscle memory is just to hover over the sending domain. And oh my God, you know what? That's not Netflix. There's an I missing in Netflix.com. It's not Netflix. That's really good, right?
Right.
And then you avoid it. You delete it because of the muscle memory.
And I think this also speaks to an issue too. So of course not so much, a lot of organizations, they may have those cybersecurity training programs in place, but also you have to look at the quality of those training programs. Are you really learning from it, or is it just more of like click the box? Okay, I'm good for the year, leave me alone, that type of thing.
You couldn't be more right, Dr. Joseph. I hear people who come to me and say, we want to train once a year, 45 minutes to an hour, and be done with our compliance obligation. It's a checkbox exercise. And I asked them this question. I said, okay, let's pretend this wasn't cybersecurity training. Let's pretend it was physical fitness. Would you go to the gym once a year to try and stay in shape?
No, absolutely not. Not once a year.
Right. So how do you expect people to adopt good habits and a culture of cyber literacy, cybersecurity, when they get it for 45 minutes or an hour once a year?
Right. Yeah, it's not going to work.
It's not going to work. The same thing happens when they send 45-minute videos to a person to watch once a month or once a quarter. I can tell you, in a room full of CISOs, this question was asked: how many people have trained their employees with 45-minute videos? And half the hands went up. How many press play and leave the computer to go get a coffee or talk to a colleague while it's playing for those 45 minutes and then come back and fake their way through the questions? Almost all the hands stayed up. You have to have engagement, right? You can't just send these videos and expect people to watch it. 5 minutes is like the maximum attention span of people nowadays in their busy lives with the serotonin machines, these little phones and such. So you have to keep the training short and interactive. So when you watch our videos, you have to answer a quiz. To pass the quiz in the video once a month takes 6 minutes tops. But if you don't watch the video, you can't answer the quiz questions, because we ask a couple of esoteric questions, and if you do the phishing exercise, you actually have to pick and choose and answer correctly on 6 or 7 email puzzle pieces. Is the sender safe or suspicious? Is the subject safe or suspicious? Is the greeting safe or suspicious? Is the spelling, punctuation, grammar safe or suspicious? Urgency and emotionality, links to external websites and attachments. And that process of looking through 7 things, probably in that order, builds that muscle memory, so that when you're going through your inbox and something weird comes up, you're like, okay, sender, well, it looks kind of okay. It's an invoice, but I never get invoices from John, and I know it is John. All right, call him. Calling John. John, did you just send me an invoice? No, your email's been compromised? Oh, thank God I didn't click. Okay, you better fix that.
Right.
Bye, John. Yeah, so we teach people those literacy skills.
Yeah, no, I think that's perfect, because as I mentioned, I think far too often it is more of a checkbox exercise, where you're not really gaining anything from the training. You just say, hey, you get an email, say, hey, you're delinquent on your training, you need to get it done before you lose your computer access, whatever the case is, and then get back to their regular busy day. But again, so even with that, I think I think that's a situation for a lot of organizations and companies, even within the government. You can see issues with that. They're just trying to get it done, just so that way the supervisor's off their back about it, and that way they can move on to the next thing. I'm thinking that as we're just talking about this now, maybe there has to be some of an evaluation of I think it needs to be catered to the specific organization, like kind of looking like, okay, let's look at this organization's mission set, look at what they're doing from the day to day. How can we incorporate this training to where they can really focus and engage with it, and really take something from it, and not compromise what they do on the day to day work. So I don't know if that means if they need to maybe set up a dedicated day or a week or whatever the case is for like organization wide. Say, hey, we everyone needs to make sure we do this, no matter what we do. We need to be intentional and do this and focus on this, and then we can get back to our regular mission. I don't know. It's just like I said, just far too often that happens, and people say that you said are they doing the training? Technically, yes, but are they learning from it? Probably not.
Yeah. There's a few analogies and things that you can use, but we think of cyber literacy and the human firewall as a chain, a big heavy chain, and it only takes one weak link to break that chain in half by a hacker and to get into an organization. So you have to have everybody on board. It has to become ingrained in the culture of a company, and you do that with storytelling. Here's real world things that have happened. Here's the kinds of attacks that not only pertain to you here at the office, but in your personal lives. For example, we have a video this year on ishing attacks, ISHING. And you're like, I've never heard of that. What's that? Well, it's just a video that covers phishing, SMS smishing, which you may have gotten the toll violation text message recently. Almost all the people I know have gotten that. And that leads to a malicious outcome. Phishing is over the phone, and QR code phishing is quishing. So we have a video on those things. But another on money laundering problems or money scams. And you can have romance scams where people have fake romance web things. So the more you put it into the context of people's personal and professional lives, the more it uptakes. It gets ingrained in them. So storytelling is great. Props are great. Sharing examples of real world breaches that have occurred and that we just dodged a bullet on, and sharing that within your organization. Those are all things that help get people to pay attention.
Yeah, and I think that resonates more. When you're able to see actual stories, seeing how this actually played out in the real world, and then it kind of makes more sense. Okay, this is why I'm doing this, because XYZ company, this happened to them last year, whatever the case is. Then it kind of just helps to, like I said, it helps to resonate, take it in better, and be like, okay, I don't want to end up like them. And it just shows the importance of, like, you can learn about, like an organization mistakes, or whatever the case may be, and then kind of you see what happened with them, and then you understand why, or appreciate why you're doing this, why you're doing the training. So I think that's great. So how have your experiences with Toastmasters, Rotary, and fundraising for cancer research influenced your approach to leadership in the cybersecurity field?
Wow. I've never been asked that question, so this is a good one. Thanks for asking it, Dr. Joseph. Let me take them in sequence. So Toastmasters was to speak clearly, confidently, and to practice. You don't give a speech without practicing it 10 times with an audience or people that can provide you feedback. You'll notice I don't mind pausing in the delivery of a sentence. I don't do and a couple of words like we're going. You just wait it out and speak clearly, distinctly, and confidently. So that's Toastmasters. That helps in the boardrooms. It helps in our training. It helps on these podcasts, for example. With Rotary, I really like this question because I see a world that's so full of win-lose solutions that are proposed, whether it's the military or the government or anything else. I always was taught leadership is about finding a win-win solution. And that's why I'm so proud of our company, CyberHoot, because it's a win-win-win-win. It's a win for the end user who learns with interesting, gamified, positive reinforcement training. It's a win for their leadership team because everybody's being trained. There's nobody forgotten. We guarantee everyone takes the phishing campaign every single time it's assigned, and we can track it down to the last person taking it, rather than only those that open an email in the fake email campaign scenarios, which is 50% of your users don't get measured or benefit. It's a win for the MSP or the MSSP or the IT department who aren't eroding the value of their relationship with the people they're designed to support and help and empower through IT, because we're doing positive reinforcement. We're teaching and educating instead of measuring what they don't know and punishing and shaming and fearfulness, creating those things. And finally, if all of those three win, then CyberHoot wins because we're growing and we're benefiting and we're bringing positive cyber literacy to the world. So Rotary is all about win-win. There's a four-way test. Is it beneficial to all concerned is one of the things they say at the beginning of every Rotary meeting. Rotary is a global network of volunteers that are dedicated to solving real-world problems through their community service, leadership, and international collaboration. They may single-handedly one day soon eliminate polio in the world. For it. But when a child is not vaccinated, they can develop polio. And if we vaccinate everyone possible for a period of 1 or 2 or 3 years, the polio vaccine has nowhere to live and it could die out. And so we could cure the world of this debilitating disease through Rotary and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So Rotary has other things. Will it build goodwill and better friendships and be beneficial to all concerned and these sorts of things? But it's a service organization. And then I think the last part was what do we have? Well, the fundraising, the cancer.
Yes.
Who here listening today hasn't been touched by cancer in one way or another? I'm sure we could all count on two hands, maybe, and more, the number of people that have had a cancer diagnosis. It used to be, in many cases, a death sentence. It's not today because of the research of organizations like Dana-Farber. And through my bike ride, I do a 192-mile bike ride once a year, and I run a hockey tournament for 150 people coming up in May 17th to do the fundraising to raise 20 grand or so for my donation to Dana-Farber. I'm helping fight cancer. My family has been touched by it in many, many ways, and I'm sure you know people as well. And because I'm healthy and well and I can do this, I feel like an obligation to do it, to help push the cancer treatments forward, to make them less harmful, to make them more palatable, to have a cure for certain kinds of cancers.
Right.
And that's really happened. I don't know if you know this, but the Pan Mass Challenge is the largest sports-oriented fundraiser in the world. They've raised $1 billion since 1980.
Wow.
Through all volunteer work, 1 billion with a B. And I just had a little tiny drop in the bucket, but we do our part.
Well, for one, I definitely commend you on the work you're doing, and that's very positive because we need that. As you mentioned, we're talking about even positive reinforcement, just that work and what you're contributing to, and the positive cause you're doing. I think that's great. But please, definitely, absolutely, and especially, I know, family members, friends who've unfortunately been afflicted by cancer, and I'm sure our listeners here may know someone or two that may have been affected. So yeah, this definitely unfortunately affects a lot of folks, and learning more, continuing that research, continue to seek breakthroughs in research, and hopefully to completely eradicate it at some point. I think that's definitely a goal worth aspiring to. So again, I definitely tip my hat to you and the work you're doing for that.
Thank you.
So we have Craig Taylor here, CEO and co-founder of CyberHoot, here on the Cyber Coffee Hour, part of the Alive Podcast Network. As we get to the back half of the episode, we'll learn a little bit more about our guest and maybe a little bit more lighthearted questions. Learn a little bit more about Craig as we get ready to wrap up the episode here. So Craig, so I understand that. So the current project. I understand you have a current project, phishing simulations. I don't know, you touched on it a little bit more, but maybe you could just dig a little bit deeper, and if you could share what are some of the planned outcomes you have for that project.
Well, we called our phishing simulation Hootfish, and it's focused solely on positive reinforcement. It does not. We send out an email notice to each employee at a company to say, Dr. Joseph, here's your phishing simulation. You need to visit the website and answer 6 or 7 questions about an email successfully to pass this test. It's a test. It falls under cyber insurance and industry practice requirements for phish testing employees. And it's designed to be educational and a positive outcome, because you're going to pass a test, not fail by clicking on something you shouldn't. Too often we are focused on the negative side of things, which I've alluded to. When we walk someone through, we're teaching them in the moment what they need to know, but they're building points in their avatar system to grow their little owl avatar. We have a baby hatchling at the beginning when you have no cyber literacy that we know of.
Yeah.
And then as you get points and pass quizzes and complete your assignments on time, your owl becomes more mature, and then ultimately it gains armor and maybe a sword in the end. And people really
awesome.
like that, because we get emails to our support. How come my colleague has a higher level owl than me? And we have to go in and research, and well, sir or ma'am, you haven't done your quizzes on time. You were past the due date. We give everybody 2 weeks to do these things.
Right.
And you got fewer correct answers. You might have got 6 out of 7 correct, and your colleague got all 7, and he did it on time. So you get more points if you do these things more correctly and more timely. We know they're paying attention.
Yeah.
And we recently had a company get acquired. We had 2 organizations. This company bought this company, and they wanted to merge. But unfortunately, we couldn't maintain their hootfish scores when we merged them because of the complicated interplay with databases and such. And they're like, no, no, no. We'll just stay in 2 separate instances of CyberHoot because I don't want to lose my,
Right.
wise owl sage,
Hey, dude, these are bragging rights here. We can't
yeah,
give that
exactly.
up.
They were very excited about that. So we filed a patent on it. It hasn't been accepted, but I hope we can protect the patent because it's, no one has focused on positive reinforcement fish testing in the past, and this is something that I think as a legacy, if I was to die next week, it would be to say I hopefully push the industry from negative to positive reinforcement. Everyone, including dogs, love treat-based approaches to training and education and exercises, and it's for the betterment of the world, right? Because you have
Right.
better outcomes and you have better affect. People feel better doing things where there's a positive reinforcement basis rather than a negative reinforcement basis. So that is really the genesis of our hootfish. We've even turned it into a challenge where you can have a leaderboard. You can do it at conferences or you can do it at prospects if you're an MSP, and you can share this one link and people will have a countdown timer and then they'll be on the leaderboard. Like, who did this? Who identified the 6 or 7 things correctly the fastest? And so you have, person 1 did it in 45 seconds. Person 2 did it in 50 seconds. So person 2 tries again and gets it at 44 seconds. Person 1 goes in and tries it again and gets it at 42 seconds. And it's a competition, and it makes learning fun. It's like when I go to play hockey, I love hockey. I don't feel like I'm working out one moment, and there's not a care in the world that enters my mind when I'm on the ice. I forget all about my challenges and difficulties in the world, and I'm just there exercising, but I'm enjoying myself. I'm having
Right.
fun. And
Exactly.
that's what we try to do with these exercises. We try to trick you into learning things without
Exactly.
you feeling like, oh, I got to watch a 45-minute video and answer questions, and I'm
Right.
bored as silly, and this is so dumb, So
That I know that's absolutely perfect because and we had talked about this earlier, saying you kind of just hacking your brain in a sense where you're not focusing on the like, oh man, I got to do this training, but yeah, if you're able to enjoy it, where that the actual train part is secondary in your mind, and you're more focused on the competition part. Because for me, yeah, I'm very competitive too. My whole family, we're very competitive. So for me, as you mentioned with hockey, for me it's really basketball.
sure.
So we could play. I mean, either way, whatever works for everyone. But so like for me, yeah, it'd be basketball. So yeah, so you're playing ball, and of course you're working out. You run up and down the court. You get your cardiovascular up. So you're not necessarily thinking about the exercise portion,
Right.
but you're more just focused on the game. And so that's a byproduct. And when when you're done, you're like, oh man, it really got a good workout in. But and I think what you're doing is great because it's introducing the necessary training that's needed for organizations, so that way it can prove that their cybersecurity posture, but do it in a different way to where they can have fun and be competitive. And yeah, I don't know, Craig. Yeah, you definitely work on that pad because you may see some folks, when they get their owl up, you might get some tattoos like, look, I got my owl, he's dripping right now, So yeah, people gonna be competitive. So I think that's great. It's a great way to have fun while learning, and then also at the same time you're keeping your whole organization and network secure. So I think that's awesome.
Thank you.
So how can organizations effectively prepare for and address the most significant emergent threats in the cybersecurity landscape?
I think it's important to stay informed, Dr. Joseph, because there are new iterations on the same old attacks. Like this unsubscribe link is still nothing more than a phishing attack. Someone sent you an email that they wanted you to do something with, click a link that you shouldn't, but they buried it in some unsubscribe link. And so it's a new version of an old attack, the same old, same old. So I think through education and awareness, you can keep people ahead of the attacks that are out there. And that's really what we're all about. We have that virtual CISO offering. So we're seeing the successful attacks and we're helping defend against those and manage incidents through to eradication and recovery. But that also informs us in the video trainings that we have to produce each year for our clients so that what we're producing reflects exactly what's happening in the world this year. We had, the smishing attacks, they've become a big thing in the last 2 years. So 3 years ago, we didn't do smishing. Now we have a SMS phishing video concept in our program this year. And QR code phishing was another emerging threat. So we include on that. So if you if you find the right LMS vendor to provide cyber literacy training and they make it fun and enjoyable, you stand a better chance of having a culture of cyber literacy within your organization where they start to question things and they come back and they're prepared for the curveballs that might be thrown at them. That's really the key. Now, I should say that not everything boils down to the human firewall. You have to have a technical stack that also protects you, right?
Exactly.
With that password hygiene stuff, you can tell everyone 15 character passwords, multi-factor, or passkey adoption. And you could say that until you're blue in the face. No one is going to do it if they haven't got a password manager. I have 500 accounts. I know one password, maybe two, and it's to my master password to unlock my password manager.
Exactly.
That's a technical solution that helps the human mind cope with, I can't remember 15 characters, even a passphrase for more than 2 or 3 accounts. Therefore, if you're not on a password manager today, I argue you're recycling your passwords everywhere you go. And what happens is one exploited website where your password was visible becomes your Achilles heel, because all the other websites, the hacker can try to log into them using variations on your favorite password. We see it all the time because we do dark web reporting in our platform in CyberHoot, and we'll see redacted passwords like the last 4 letters are the same for 10 different breaches. And I'm like, come on, guys.
Yeah.
Obviously, you're not on a password manager, and you need one desperately because hackers will try this password, which we only see the redacted version of it, but on the dark webs, they have the whole password to just stick in there on that SSL VPN or on the email account. And if, God forbid you don't have multi-factor or passkey adoption, hackers are going to get into your network.
Yeah, I am so glad you said that, Craig, because I've tried convincing my parents. So when they listen to this, I'm gonna play this episode in particular. My parents who save, I mean, they're old school. They save passwords in sheet of paper or a little book and stuff, or stick-it notes that's highly visible when I visit. I'm like, come on. So I try to tell them about password managers, and they're skeptical about it because I guess if hackers were to hack the password managers, then they expose that way. So again, is there a way of saying I think I'm gonna stick with my trusted sticky notes and a little book, and I'm sure I'm not the anomaly, but like what do you say for those? So not within the company organization environment, but just regular parents sitting at home, or what do you say to the different households that are kind of going through this, that this is important as well, just maintaining your password hygiene?
Well, I would say 2 things to answer that question. Number one, you can't make people adopt a password manager. I have tried with family members. I've been successful with one of my parents. The other one doesn't use computers, so it doesn't matter. I've been unsuccessful with other family members to adopt it. So, I'm an expert in cybersecurity. And if you're an expert in law and you tell me the legal advice and I choose to ignore you, that looks bad on me, not you. You've provided your opinions on what would work and what's appropriate, but it's up to the person that's listening to adopt that, right? So I think sometimes you can't force people because one way or another, they're just not believing in it. For those that I've convinced to do it, I will share this. There's an arc of, I had someone adopt a password manager in Rotary, and I had to see him every Wednesday for a month. And the first Wednesday, I'll never forget, he was scowling at me. I didn't sit at his table because I thought he was angry or really mad at me for some reason. And I come up to him afterward. He goes, Craig, you're killing me. This password manager sucks. I can't figure it out. It's so difficult. Yeah. And I'm like, just keep at it. I promise you it will get better. I promise. And you will thank me eventually. So the next week rolls around and he sat at my table. He searched me out. I was there early. He sat down at my table. He goes, Craig, it's a little better. I'm starting to get it, but man, is this tough. Are you sure this is the best thing you could teach me? Right. I'm like, honestly, it is. And you'll thank me. I missed the next meeting. So a month later, I go to sit down and he goes, Craig, I get it. I understand it. And I honestly, I have to tell you, how did I survive 30 years of computers without this tool? My life is so much better now. And you made me do it. Thank you for making me do this. And he was 65 years old and a business owner getting ready to retire. And he got it. He figured it out. But everybody goes through that arc of cursing me, begrudging me, and then loving me. And I just have to weather the storm for a couple of weeks, and then people will really sing the praises of the password manager. Now, I would also caution you, not all password managers are equal. I'll tell you this story. So maybe for your parents, tell them this. Look, I know what your argument is. No software ever written was perfect. There's got to be bugs in every piece of software ever written, and they're not wrong. This is an absolute truth. So that means bugs are in password managers. That means that password managers holding all the eggs in one basket could be risky. Absolutely true. That's why you need to pick a good one. We've looked at this. I blogged about this at cyberhoot.com/blog. If you search for the term last straw, LAST and straw, you'll find the article on how we think you should go about finding a password manager. And truthfully, there are some out there that haven't had a great history of security. But there are 3 that are in that article, I can name them if you want, that I think went above and beyond to invite white hat hackers, pen testing organizations, application security experts to look at their code, look at their architecture, look at their business operations, and try to find the flaws in it. And so by inviting not once, twice, but 15 or 20 times, they've said, experts, look at what we do, look at our code, look at our architecture, look at our business operations, and see if you can find holes for us to fix. We don't want any holes. This is too critical, all the eggs in one basket. And there are 3 companies that have done that over and over and over and over again. 1Password, Bitwarden, and Keeper. All 3 of them published to their websites really extensive third-party reviews of those things. And that makes them, in my books, head and shoulders above some of the others that don't mention it on their website. Now, maybe they're doing it, but they're missing out on the credibility that it gives. And so at that point, we turn to security experts and say, is this still a good idea? And we absolutely say yes. It's the lesser of all evils. Passwords basically suck any which way you look at them. They're terrible. And as we move closer and closer to pass keys, which are much more user-friendly and more secure because they only work between your computer and the remote website, and it's a cryptographic hash between the two. And so if it's stolen, it doesn't work anywhere else. And you can't use it if you steal it from me unless you get my private key to use it somewhere else. And that's very hard to do. So passkeys are fantastic in the future of, identity management. But until we get to that, and everyone universally supports that, passwords, we're stuck with them. So you need 15 characters. You need it tied to multi-factor, which should be an authenticator app, SMS at the very last resort, like a text message to your phone, or a YubiKey, something like, I have one here, something like this, that you stick in and you press the fingerprint there and boom, you can authenticate. All of those are really good security tied into a password manager. It's the only way to manage hundreds, and in some cases, I have 500 accounts. So I don't know any of my passwords. If I make a mistake, if you make a mistake, if anyone listening to this makes a mistake, clicks on a link to a malicious website and your password, you might give it to the hacker. But your password manager will look at the domain and say, I don't know where I am. What am I supposed to put in here?
Right.
I can't authenticate you because I don't have an entry for, LinkedIn.it for Italy, like the 2-letter code is Italy. Someone told me they clicked on a link somebody wrote a reference for them, right? A recommendation on LinkedIn, and they clicked the link and they went to the LinkedIn website. It was identical to LinkedIn. And they're like, why isn't my password manager logging me in? And they refresh the password manager and they refresh the page. And suddenly they look at the domain. It's like LinkedIn.it. That's not LinkedIn.com. That's IT. That's Italy. What the heck am I doing in Italy? I'm glad I don't know my password because they didn't steal it from me here.
Right.
So it has some additional protections.
And that's it. That's definitely a great point. Because as you, I guess, as you train or as you build out that password manager, of course, it'll say, of course, your credentials and then also the associated URL for that password. So in that example you just gave, if it's going to a site that's wrong and that's not been saved, especially if a site you've been going to quite often, as you mentioned, even with LinkedIn as an example. So it definitely should know LinkedIn.com. So if you're going to a site that looks like LinkedIn and the password manager is like, I'm sorry, I don't know you. So that should kind of set something off and maybe take do a little further investigation and see like, oh, okay, you dodged a bullet right there.
You really did, because just clicking can be disastrous today. There is some really malicious links that can do worse than bring you to a false website and try to steal your credentials there. There's some pretty amazing malware out there. The other thing it'll do is it'll monitor all the passwords you enroll in it, and it'll start to, after it gives you like a grace period of like 3 weeks to a month in most cases, and then it'll start warning you. I've seen this password before, Craig. You need to put it in. You need to change it. Do you want to change it now?
Right.
And it'll remind you of those things. So really amazing stuff.
Which technology first sparked your interest in cybersecurity?
Oh my gosh. Years and years ago, I had an Apple IIe when I was a kid. And I loved the computer for the sheer novelty of it, I think. And so when I went to college, I was really, I tried, I think, one computer programming class, and I was like, no way, this is not for me. So I gave up on my computer education at that moment. I said, I'm not going to be a computer scientist. I'm going to study the human condition, psychology, and I'm going to understand what motivates people, how they learn, and that sort of thing. But while I was at the university, I was working in the computer lab and early days of the internet, supporting email and Word Perfect, things like that. I don't think you probably know what that was. But these things, they kept my love of computers alive. And then right out of college, I'm like, I can't do a PhD in psychology. I'm not material for a PhD psychology. No offense to you, Dr. Joseph. I know it's difficult and I couldn't bring myself to do it then. Maybe one day, maybe in
Of course.
security and psychology, I can blend them too. But I got a job in a firewall vendor, and I looked at this job. I'm like, I can learn all the internet protocols and how to support them. And this thing called the WWW is coming around. That looks pretty cool. And it just caught my attention, and I've been in it ever since for 30 years. One of my companies sponsored my CISSP in 2001, and I passed that. I didn't think I did. I was almost would have bet money I failed it,
Yeah.
and I didn't. I passed. So I have a 5-digit, CISSP number. It's in under 25,000. It's actually below that. So now there's what, a million? I'm sure there's quite a few. That's what spawned, my love of learning and computers and what motivates people. And I think when I founded my company, CyberHoot, co-founded it, I didn't found it myself, but when I co-founded it, it married my love of education and training with my love of computers and cybersecurity. And it was like all fit together perfectly because there was such a need in the industry for positive reinforcement education, gamification, all these things that I saw a gap and it's proved to be very, very powerful.
Which coffee helps you power through the day?
Great question. I recently learned, I don't know if you know this, but hot water and plastic is a big no-no. Microplastics leach out of the K-cups. So you shouldn't be using K-cups for coffee if you don't want to have your body riddled with microplastics. So I bought a French press about a year ago, and I've been using that. And I just got some Javalia coffee to put into my French press, and I had a nice double-sided, oh, here's my CyberHoot mug. I have a double-sided. This is a 20-ouncer, huge one. And I make a double batch of Javalia, and it's like heaven. I love it.
Javalia coffee. Okay. Check that out. If you could have any superpower to help you in cybersecurity, what would it be and why?
Okay, I remember you asked me this and I had to prepare. So I think if I could show people before they get breached what it would be like, kind of like Marley's Ghost. Remember the Christmas Carol and the ghost of past and present and future?
Right.
If I could be the ghost of the future and bring these companies to the future where they're breached, and the pain and suffering and the financial fraud that they have, then I could bring them back to the president. Guess what? They'd write me not a blank check, but a reasonable check to do very, very cheap things that are easily accomplished, of awareness training and phishing in a positive way as starters, a password manager as the third thing you should do. And guess what? You're going to take care of 90% of the attacks against you. Yes, there will be 10% that could breach into you, but I've always said this to be true. If you're on a street full of houses and your house is lit up, and maybe there's a fence in front of it and a dog in the yard and the windows are closed and there's camera surveillance, no one's going to want to break into your house. They're going to go to the next house that's dark, that doesn't have a fence or cameras or a dog. They're going to, hackers and organized theft of financial crimes in hacking are opportunistic. They target the weakest companies out there, the weakest employees out there. And if you can bring everybody up to a minimum baseline, you're going to be so less appealing to hackers. And there's
Yeah.
so many easier targets out there, fish in a barrel where they're not doing these things. I would have that superpower. I would take them to the future, show them what pain and suffering it is, and say, look, you're being penny wise right now by not investing in your people and your technology, like with a password manager. That's penny wise, and you're going to be pound or hundreds of pound foolish in the future when you have to pay a ransom or you wire money to the wrong place. It just requires a little forethought, a little proactiveness ahead of time to make sure that all your employees, and especially your new ones, right? One more story for you. A founding story of CyberHoot. I didn't tell you about this. This is my surprise. What do you
Okay.
think this is?
What like gift cards? I think.
$10 in $100 gift cards, right?
Yeah.
A new employee started a firm 10, 11 years ago, and he or she put on their LinkedIn page or their socials that I'm so excited. I'm starting at this company. I'm fresh out of college and it's my first job. I can't wait to start.
Right.
And that day she got her email, or he got his email, and got an email from the president of the company. I have a hush-hush project. I need you to go out and buy $100 gift cards, 10 at a time, scratch the backs off, send a picture to me so I can give them as surprise bonuses to our employees. And you'd be doing me a huge service. I know you're new here, and I know you want to make a good impression. This would be the best way to get curry favor with me, the president, to do this. And my goodness, if they weren't successful over 2 weeks at buying 200, and it was just for the sheer fact they didn't know email could be spoofed. They didn't have back then, maybe 10, 12 years ago, it wasn't common to have this email was from outside your organization, those banners.
Right.
I still get people telling me, can you turn the damn banner off? It's cluttering up. I can't read my phone when I'm at a stoplight because the banner is in the way and I have to scroll. And now you're driving a car. You shouldn't be reading your phone.
Exactly.
Stop complaining. So these things are not complicated, but they require a little bit of proactiveness to teach these things. That's a great story that you can take, anyone listening to this can take to their HR, to their cyber, and say, let's fund a learning management system to teach a little cyber literacy. It's a requirement. If you don't have cyber insurance, I ask why. You have car insurance, you have life insurance, you probably have errors and omission insurance. Why not cyber? It helps you recover when a catastrophe occurs. And if you want cyber, you have to do education and training and testing and an incident response plan. All of that matters.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. And then lastly, Craig, what hobbies, interests, or recreational activities you enjoy beyond cybersecurity?
Well, you know, I play hockey. I run a tournament for 150 hockey players in May. I like to mountain bike. I like playing golf. I'm terrible at golf. I'm really good at hockey, and I'm equally bad at golf. I know where the puck can go within like a 3-foot radius of any shot I take, any pass I make. But in golf, I can't get it 50 yards from where I want it to go. I'm so bad. It's not even funny. But I love it, and it's a great exercise. You go for a walk, and you hit a little white ball around the course, and you get a little exercise, and you usually have 3 other people with you, and you learn about their lives and what's going on, and it's just a nice way to socialize and get a little exercise. So I love those things.
Oh, that's awesome. And, as you say that, I think the closest I've gotten to playing golf was being a caddy when I was younger.
Nice.
And but yeah, as far as actually playing, no, I couldn't do it. I don't know. Maybe it's something I'll try now. As I'm a little older now. But yeah, when I was trying to do it, I was like in high school then. So, but no, I do know I can appreciate. Yeah, golf can be a great, I guess a byproduct of playing golf. Great way to meet and socialize with folks, especially the higher brass. Maybe be able to play with them and kind of learn, get some insight on things. So that's a great opportunity to have some discussions there.
Mm-hmm.
But Craig, it's definitely been great having you on the show. I definitely appreciate you coming through the Cyber Coffee Hour. So before we go, anything that you want to share with our listeners?
Well, if you want to learn more about how we approach cyber literacy training with a positive experience, positive reinforcement, email sales@cyberhoot.com or visit cyberhoot.com and book a demo. I'd love to show you how we're trying to build cyber literacy in the world and give you a quick demo. So thank you for having me, Dr. Joseph. This has been a real treat and a pleasure for me. I've really enjoyed myself. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for coming through. And thank you to you, listening and watching and joining us for another episode of the Cyber Coffee Hour, part of the Alive Podcast Network. If you enjoyed this episode, explore more engaging content in the Alive Podcast Network app. By supporting this podcast and nearly 100 other Black hosted shows, you can enjoy ad-free listening while contributing to a diverse range of voices in the podcasting space. We appreciate your support and look forward to sharing more insightful conversations with you in our next episode. So until then, keep brewing those ideas and stay curious about cybersecurity. All right, that's it. It's a wrap. We out of here. Peace.
Peace out. Thank you, Dr. Joseph.